Hi, so this next lecture which we are doing is, as you can see in the picture, it's about choosing something which is effective rather than choosing something that looks impressive. So as I normally do with this picture as well, which is out there on the slide, I would want you to have a look. What are the words that you see? Just have a look, try to make meaning out of that picture. Great. So you've probably seen some of the words which are out there. There's research, there's performance, there's strategy, there's goal, quality, and the most biggest word out there is efficiency. So in this picture, as you can see, it looks like these are a lot of machine sort of cogs which are working together. One will lead to the other. It's part of like a machine where everything works along with the rest. But they all work, and ultimately what do we want out of that is to get efficiency. So this picture sort of gives us an idea that to get efficiency, you sometimes need things like first is to have a goal. Like what is it that you want to be efficient in? Once you know, then you need to know how to get there. So then what do? You need to have a strategy. Once you have a strategy, then what do? You check that there's some quality in that strategy. It's not that you just choose a strategy and then you think that, okay, I have a plan now and it's automatically going to work. It might not work if there's no quality. And if there's no quality, even though you might reach your goal, you might not have performance. So to get efficiency, okay, and to make sure something is done, efficiency is basically something that achieves results efficiently. Okay, it is not about just doing things which look good. It is about doing things which give results. Ultimately, we want to have results. And this applies very much to exercise, very much to strength and conditioning. And in strength and conditioning, I have discussed this in some of the lectures earlier, right? You have sometimes this concept of aur mehnat karo, hard work, we need to work harder. And a lot of times nobody has the answer how much. Yes, you should be working harder, but how hard? So many times we don't have these answers and nobody knows like what they're doing, but they're all working hard. So there's one more line that can be used for us to know what we're doing, is it right or not? And what that line is that don't just be busy, be productive. Makes you think. Think about this, is being busy good enough? Is looking busy good enough? Or your whole work that is happening, is there some productive outcome? A lot of times people might appear to look very good while doing something, or they might look like they're trying hard. And sometimes that can look very good when you see somebody doing something which looks like as if they're busy. Busy does not mean productive. In fact, generally if we see with some of the most efficient people, they're very relaxed because they know exactly what they're doing and they know what to expect. Sometimes people who are very busy, who look very flustered, who look sort of, that they're very nervous. Why are they nervous? It's possibly because they don't know what they're doing, but they're doing something. So is doing something okay? Here to give an example is like an exercise. You see somebody who's really sweating very hard, lifting a lot of weights, lifting heavy, running, doing a lot of work. Does that mean they're having a good workout? Or is there somebody else who's doing exactly what they need for their age, for their requirement? Maybe they're getting back after an injury and you see that they're doing less compared to the other person. But is that a sign that this person is doing less and this person is doing better because they're just working, they're busy? So it's very important to understand, don't be busy for the sake, just for the sake of being busy. If you are just busy, does not mean it's productive. And productive means you also have to be effective. So this we have to get in us. The earlier you understand, the better it becomes. So we'll get to the next few points to know how to choose effective exercises, effective workouts, how to be effective ourselves. As a strength and conditioning coach, how do you know you're effective versus just being impressive? Do you just want to look good in clothes and just stand there and not know what you're doing but appear like you know it all? Or do you want to be calm, know what you're doing, decide a program, get the results? Which one would you choose? To look impressive and just look busy? Or would you like to be relaxed, know what you're doing? I think you know the answer to that. So we'll move on to the points that allow you to be effective. Let's go through that and then let's make this lecture something worthwhile. So now a few points here. A lot of times what people get confused in when it comes to choosing effective instead of doing something which is not very effective but which looks impressive. Why is it that people sometimes, S&C coaches, why is it that they choose maybe wrong exercises, wrong or ineffective rather than the word wrong? Why is it that they choose ineffective exercises or programs when there are better ways? So here are some of those reasons why. So the first one, what does it say? Newer is better. So a lot of times people think something which is new. Like in Hindi there's a saying, market mein naya kya hai? Ekdam naya item hai. So you just assume it's good, naya. Because it's new, it's like the latest phone out there, or maybe something that is very sort of flashy and you've just seen it recently, the latest pair of shoes. So now, are you going to choose a workout because it's just the latest workout, the newest workout to burn your stomach fat, okay? The newest workout to get big arms, the newest workout to make you explosive, okay? So we'll be talking about this a bit more. Then the next one is popular versus unknown. Some people like it that way. The conference presentation approach to exercise choice. I'll explain this. This is something I use a lot. That has helped a lot and hopefully it should help others too. Specific or general exercises. And the last one is best exercise, worst exercise, the marketing approach. So let's head on to the first one, which is newer versus newer is better approach. So the new is better approach, okay? Why something which is new and we get carried away? Something, maybe we see something on the internet and you see somebody, maybe sometimes a very popular person, a very famous coach, or maybe some Instagram person who is creating videos, and they say that this is the latest exercise or this is the latest workout and this is what has been found to be done and it works well. So what do you do at that moment? Do you say that, hey, let me try this, okay? Obviously the answer to that is that you choose what works, okay? So there are some exercises, some schools of thought, which have over time stood the test of time. Meaning over time some exercises have been found to be effective, some programs have been found to be effective, some thoughts have been found to be effective. So the principle of individualization or individuality as it's called, which says that you create a program which is specific to that person, right? Now this view is held by a lot of experienced people, by a lot of schools of thought. So that is why we follow. So when you do something and you follow what's called the old school method, meaning the traditional style. And there's something which is the cool exercise. So old school versus cool. What do you prefer? What do you choose? Now does it mean everything which is done traditionally is right and everything new is wrong? Obviously not. What is new can also be effective. But you have to have the judgment to check which one works. And you have to be able to assess. So like I keep saying always, you ultimately have to take a decision. There's a lot of info available out there. And the strength and conditioning field is not a very regulated field. How do we know what to do, what not to? There's really not much out there. There's different bodies which are small scale bodies, which each one having their own stand, each one saying do this. Somebody will say do a different program. They have their own philosophies. Which one do you follow? You don't follow a philosophy, you create something like what was said earlier. Absorb the best, discard what is not useful, create what is uniquely applicable to your athlete. So choose between old school, use new methods, but just don't go for it because it's new, just because it's the latest. That is something you have to keep an eye for. Next one, This is again something which is like a very popular thing nowadays. A lot of people say, I give info which is evidence based. Evidence based sounds nice, isn't it? Sounds so good. Sounds like as if evidence based means what this person or this organization says is ultimate. This is it. And what everybody else does doesn't have evidence. Now, evidence in sports science, in strength and conditioning, can we look at it on the same lines as evidence in medicine, in pharmacology, where medicine is tested and a lot of research goes in? You have to really understand when something is said to be evidence based because there was a paper presented and there were maybe 15 people it was tested on, and these 15 people don't belong to the same country, are not of the same age group, don't have the same exercise experience. Just because it's come on a paper, does it mean it's evidence based and it's great? Again, this is a question you have to ask. In sports science, evidence based is a very, very tricky term, and it always has to be taken with a pinch of salt. Evidence based does not mean it's effective. Evidence based does not mean it is ineffective as well. Evidence based just means that there is some evidence, and that evidence is what we have to ask. What is the evidence? Who says? How many studies have been done? Is it reasonable? Is there uniformity in that particular outcome? So the term evidence based, a lot of times this is used, and in the whole world and time today of internet being in everything, we have to ask ourselves really how much we want to go with fancy words sometimes. So just to sound different, we don't have to say evidence based. Okay, you have to actually in strength and conditioning be the person who can produce results. At the end of it all, whether you talk you're evidence based, you say you're an old school person, or you say I'm the cool guy with the new moves, whatever happens, when it's all done and you're hired for a job and somebody's shoulder was bad, can you get that shoulder powerful again? And can you predict that you'll get it ready in this many days? That is all that matters. You don't have to sell an idea saying that I do this and I'm different. And this is again a mistake that a lot of youngsters sometimes make in the field of strength and conditioning, that we all want to sound different to the others, right? We all want to sound sometimes better. And then we would say something like, I use evidence based. What is this evidence? How many people have this particular exercise or this being a particular program been tested on? And evidence is, what level evidence is this? Is it evidence where you can say something is so purely scientific that a statement like somebody says, okay, water is made of H2O. This is the most basic thing we've learned in school, right? So this, we have hydrogen and we have oxygen, H2O. This is the formula. Now this stands true across the world. It is not that H2O is water just in India or America or some other country. It's across the world. So is your evidence something that stands true across the world? How many people have been tested on it? So this is something we have to understand. Okay, saying evidence based or scientific just to sound okay is not the case. You have to have common sense as well. So like I said over there, evidence based exercises or evidence based workouts, take it with a pinch of salt. Don't just assume because it's on a paper is just the ultimate truth and that's it, as if that's the absolute truth and you have found it and the others haven't. We have to be logical in our approach. If you want to be a person who's successful in this field, then you have to understand that we're not in a science where we're purely into science. Okay, sports science in a way is a mix of an art and a mix of science. You need to be able to adjust it accordingly, and you have to be able to create something taking some of the principles of science. But you just can't say that I am the guy who has evidence-based science and the rest of them don't. This has to be taken with a pinch of salt. Again, a sensitive topic, not everybody would like to hear this, but the truth has to be spoken. So we have to understand that evidence-based exercises, workouts, does not mean it's just sort of a word which has come from the heavens and we don't question. Evidence-based just means that there's some evidence which probably you believe is evidence, but for many they would question, what was this research study done? Who funded the research study? How many people were tested? What was the race of these athletes or people who were tested? Were they athletes or were they regular people? What was their training experience? So many questions can come in. So evidence based, take it with a pinch of salt. Now coming to the next one, newest exercise equipment. New is better, right? So you see something which is the latest equipment on the market. Long time ago, I don't know if this still happens, but I knew when cable TV was new in India, I mean, people had a run with these equipments, of something fancy which would come and you put something around your waist, or then some machine which is fancy, you do some crunches with it, or you do some movements, and that would say that this is what is needed to get rid of that fat. And then you would have these videos, these sort of transformation videos where somebody is shown with a big stomach. Next thing you see, he's smiling with a flat stomach, and you're like, wow, this is all I need, 500 rupees. You say, now this we're talking about, of course, decades ago. I'm not too sure if this still happens and if there are still products that are sold like that, Now as strength and conditioning coaches, we need to realize, okay, that the body changes, okay, the machine just stays the same, okay, and how that body changes is not because of some machine. So newest exercise equipment, something comes new in the market, do you just think like, oh, what do I do new, so that my workouts are different to all the other strength and conditioning coaches? What are you here for? Are you here to impress your students with your exercises, or are you here to create effective exercises for your students? Do you know what is the problem that the student has, and are you creating a plan for it? This is something we need to ask ourselves, and we need to create programs that are effective, and that's why the title in the beginning. Effective over impressive. Okay, you have to choose effective any given day. It might not be the most impressive. Effective exercises, okay, are like good food. A lot of times they don't appear very good. They don't look fancy. But good food also doesn't look fancy. Food which is unhealthy is much more tastier. It looks good, the layout is good, right? But we know it's not great for us. So it's the same with effective exercises. Make sure you choose them over impressive exercises if you really want to be successful. Now the next reason why sometimes coaches might end up choosing something which is more impressive. What is impressive? Sometimes impressive is nothing but something that is very popular. Every person out there may be using something which you hear that, oh, I've heard in this gym they're using this thing, particular, there's this machine which is cost so and so. And then you see it in a few places and you think like, that's it. You have to again ask yourself, like, do I follow the herd and just do it because everybody's getting it, or do I not? Some time ago, there's various machines, where somebody stands and people will say that these vibrations will create this amount of effect if you stand and do it. And there's so many things which keep coming and going. If you are in the field for decades, you will have seen, things which have come and they just disappear. Okay, it's almost like a fad. You don't want to be following a fad, and you don't want to be following the herd. Just because everybody is doing it does not mean it has to be right. It has to work for your particular athlete. So this is something we have to also understand. Just because it's popular and everybody seems to be doing it does not mean it's great. Sometimes because it's unknown, it's something new on the market, and new but very few people know. And now you get it and it's unknown and you say, hey, you know what, this is the latest thing I'm doing. The others haven't caught up, or the others don't know. Again, might not be the best approach. It might be unknown today and new. Over time, every other guy might know it. So you're not special in any way. And over time, all of them might fail. You might fail and the other person might also fail, and it might have other issues with that approach. So make sure anything you choose has to have reasoning. And I'll be coming to a very important point regarding this in one of the slides next. Now the other thing, okay, when you choose a workout, what about celebrity workouts? You see this famous, entertainment people, or sometimes you have your sports people who come up with this workout, the X method of training, okay, the so and so training system. And now these are people who are obviously famous. You can't deny that they're famous. You can't deny that they're successful. Does it mean we follow and then we become like them? Think about it. Important and very interesting way to look at, right? If somebody is a celebrity, famous, and they've been very successful in sport as well, does it mean we just follow what they did? Will it work for your athlete? Does it have any relevance? This famous person, if let's say it's a cricketer, would his or her workouts help somebody who's a tennis player? If that famous person is a footballer, would it help somebody who's a volleyball player? Is football played with the feet and volleyball played with the hands? But hey, the footballer is very famous. You should be having answers to this, right? A lot of times, in fact, celebrity workouts, what are called celebrity workouts, one thing is that just because somebody is a celebrity does not mean they know sports science. Celebrities can be very good, whoever it is. It could be a sports person who's good in their sport, who's very famous and successful, and full respect to them for what they are. But you have to know that when you take advice, it has to be from the right person for the right thing. And I often use this example. Don't take medical advice from an engineer. And don't take engineering advice from a chartered accountant. And don't take advice for law from a chartered accountant or an engineer or a medical doctor. You take advice for law from a lawyer. So you have to know where advice comes from. Now, all these professions that I've spoken about, they're all, they're educated, they know what they do. Does it mean we can just take advice from anywhere and it applies? So same goes with celebrities when they talk about their workouts. Are these people really qualified to speak? Are they experienced to speak? How many times have they proven their workouts and who has done it? If they are endorsed by some people, is that endorsement because there's a understanding which is financial between them? We have to understand this. We have to be aware of this. We can't just follow something because some celebrity is doing it and some famous person is doing it, and we assume that, hey, if we do it or our students do it, then oh wow, that's it. So you have to be very careful, especially celebrity workouts for those who are personal trainers, those who are watching this and those who happen to be personal trainers who don't work with maybe athletes. It's even more tricky when you try to follow a celebrity workout sometimes. Now the celebrity who's there, let's take for example maybe somebody who's extremely good as a football player. Okay, that person would be extremely good for a reason. That person as an individual would probably be very gifted. Now just because he or she does that workout, does that mean you go next to your gym and make your regular client who's just come back from the bank after a hard heavy day, who has never probably trained before, just started training for 2 months, and you say this is what this celebrity workout and this person says and we're going to do this? Does it have any relevance? Does it make sense? So this is what we have to understand. Okay, and again here comes the question, don't get impressed by what is seen. Okay, find out if it's effective. Effective over impressive, that's the term. Now the next point. Now this is something I've used very successfully, and I would say pay attention to this. It will really help you in making choices about exercises, about workouts, a lot of things. It will make a difference. Now here, let's assume you choose an exercise. Somebody says that, I have a player who's maybe a footballer who's 16 years old, and this player who's 16 years old is working there's an arrow there, yes, sorry. Okay, so just to repeat that example, there's a 16-year-old male who's been training for 3 months with you, and in those 3 months you have decided to give him in the first 4 weeks this exercise, this routine, and then this and this. Now any exercise you choose, okay, for that person or for any athlete, you have to ask yourself, this is what I do to myself and it should hopefully help you guys too. You have to ask yourself, give 3 reasons why you chose this exercise. If you can give 3 reasons, and if you can say that this is the muscle fiber type that will be used most for this person, this exercise is also suitable because this person has possibly had an injury in the past, and this is the reason I have chosen this exercise, and I have chosen this amount of work, this amount of sets, these amount of sets, this amount of load. And maybe the third thing you could choose is that because this person's recovery is low, I have decided to do this from a frequency point of view this many number of times. So there should be at least 3 reasons. If you can choose 3, the chances of you going wrong are lesser. But if you've chosen an exercise without thinking about it, why is this exercise in this program? Why is this person doing this? If you have no clue, if you haven't decided, you just thought that, oh, this exercise looks cool. It's not old school, it's cool. What are you doing? Are you really making sense? So this is something to understand. Okay, make sure you find at least 3 reasons for everything that you choose. The other thing, and this is what I do again, when I present at conferences or I speak, and most of you who would have visited conferences would know that when you've done your talk, there'll be a panel, right? And they're generally experts on that subject, or they are panelists who will ask you some questions. The crowd will ask you a few questions, and then the panelists will ask you. If you made a certain statement, they'll ask you, can you explain a bit more? And then you explain to them. Now, why is this panel there? This panel is just there to dig in a bit more, to find some greater ideas, to come up with maybe some doubts that were there. Okay, they ask you so that if they didn't get something or if the people didn't get something, they ask you. Have this approach when you design a program. Think that you've designed a program, and let's say here's a plan and these are the exercises, this is the rest period, everything done. Think as if there's a panel and they're going to ask you now, why did you decide this exercise third? What was the reason for the same whole flow of exercises? What is the reason why I've decided to train this person 4 times this week? Why not 5? So you should be having answers. So when you create something which has answers where you can explain, okay, it will make sure that there's checks and balances. You yourself will check yourself. But if nobody is checking on you, then generally we are more likely to make mistakes. So have this approach. Think there's always somebody better than you, wiser than you, checking on what you're doing. That will help you improve. If you're just doing something because that looks good and you can post it on social media, then does that really make sense? So again, comes back to the effective over impressive. Now next one, in choosing effective over impressive, we know and we have discussed in the past few lectures, choosing specific over general exercises. You have to be very specific why an exercise is chosen. So if you had to explain at a conference, you need to be explaining why you chose this exercise, why this angle, why this speed, why this many reps. So you have to explain, right? Same goes with muscles and muscle groups. You have to know exactly why you're choosing an exercise which has maybe it is a full body exercise and it's getting you tired or getting the athlete tired. But you have to ask, is that what I want to get the person tired, or do I want to specifically strengthen a particular area, maybe a muscle or a group of muscles? So then you're able to do something which is specific, which is also effective. Then comes the next thing, which is specific joints. At a certain range you want a joint to be much stronger. So do you want to do that, or do you want to just train all joints and it's like do something with everything and just expect something works? So again, you have to be very specific what you choose if you want to be effective. And the next comes specific sport requirements versus general sport requirements. Here in one of the lectures earlier I've mentioned, if you have to take into account a sport like maybe say badminton, okay, again, like I've always said, one of the toughest sports out there, one of the fastest sports, loads of fitness, loads of mental pressure, and at the same time loads of skill. You need to have very fine skills of playing, very fine shots, fast shots as well. So now for badminton, what is it? Do you choose exercises which are called badminton exercises, or for swimming, like swimming exercises? Are there exercises that exist like that? We really have to ask ourselves, are there really exercises out there which are just specific? You do these and you're sorted. It is nice to believe that these exist, but are they? And then if there are exercises that exist like this, which are already there, what's your role? Why are you there? Why is the coach there? If everything already exists, there are football exercises and there's cricket exercises and badminton exercise, then nobody is needed. We all just follow something. And that is that general approach. Generalization is always cool to hear. Generalization sounds nice, but generalization doesn't work. You have to be specific to get a job which you can pinpoint. Okay, when somebody does a surgery, if there's a good surgeon who does a surgery, They just don't cut open the whole body. They know exactly what they're doing, right? And which ligament they're working on. Somebody who's got maybe a ligament injury. Imagine the surgeon just does something, which is with the cartilage. Does that make sense? Obviously it wouldn't. No surgeon would do that because they know what to do and they know how to do it good, right? So same applies with us. When we are choosing, it has to be specific, pinpointed, right there what's needed. And if you can do that, you'll be able to repeat it again and again. You'll know exactly what you're doing. And truth is, it becomes very fun to work with athletes when you know what you're doing. It's actually fun because you can know this is their problem and this is what you do and this is what changes. And if you don't know, then you're just busy. Your athlete is busy. You're not productive. Now next one, choosing exercises which you see maybe in magazines, okay, or maybe you see in a video and it says top 3 exercises for so and so. Now really, are we talking that there are exercises which exist, which are the best? Top 3 just exists? That's almost like saying that badminton exercises or swimming exercises. Is there something that exists like this? Can we really say this is it? You do this and you're sorted. You don't have to do anything. That is obviously a misconception. So this happens in magazines. I remember I was told about this when I used to write for magazines earlier and even sometimes for media. So sometimes in one of the Sunday papers or magazines, they always want to get something which is new, right? Because that's how media is. They want some new news. So if you say that I do exercise, I do walking, running, and it's very simple, it's not really worth reading. So sometimes there's top 5 exercises for losing belly fat, top 6 exercises for improving endurance, top 6 exercises for the legs, and so on and so forth. So you often see this, right, in a lot of media out there. The next point which comes, okay, you'll often see this about it, that they'll say, oh, the worst exercise. Nowadays, that's the way. Instead of saying best exercise, now some of the clickbait, what's a clickbait, right? On YouTube or some of these media channels, you might see where there's something which appears and you click thinking, oh my God, that picture was like, it's really something I've never seen before. And sometimes it's even shown somebody falling and you just click and you watch. Now what happens? You watch it, that person who's posted the video gets more views. They end up becoming popular. So that's called a clickbait. So worst exercise, this is something else that is done. You hear somebody saying the worst exercise to be done for your legs, the worst exercise for shoulders, or the worst so and so. So you again have to understand that there's a lot of marketing that goes on and you have to know exactly what is there. Truly speaking, you should be knowing before reading elsewhere what works. At least a basic idea you should be having yourself. If you are still finding it on the internet, what's great or what's not, you have to be clear about what you need to be doing. And I will be explaining in some of the lectures about what are the things that you need to really know in the beginning, like your basis. Now obviously we have done something like individuality, we have done specificity, we have done progressive overload. So this is how the basics of training are. Now with the human body, when you work with them as a strength and conditioning coach, what do you have to do? I'll explain that as well. So stay tuned, follow all these lectures, listen, understand, get wiser. Okay, don't be the person who just chases an impressive looking workout versus a effective workout. So here we are, some of the points I've mentioned, why you should be choosing effective exercise over impressive. Go through these points again. Remember that picture at the bottom. There's efficiency written big, and to get to that you have to have some strategy. And before you get to the performance part, you need to be having some goal. And in that goal, you need to be having some quality when you're working. You should have done some research also about it. And that's when you can look at efficiency and excellence. You can't get to something effective without any plan and just hoping that it works just because it looks good. Hope this lecture helps you. Keep following. The next lectures will be even more interesting, and I hope this has been helping you. So stay tuned. Thank you.